What's up, Green Bay Packers fans? Welcome back, and as always, thank you for joining me. My name's Paul Brettel. Today we're here to discuss the Packers' performance on Sunday night against the Seahawks, specifically the pass rush and Edgerrin Cooper and the impact of that on Sunday's outcome. But first, you know what to do. Hit like on the video, hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. I greatly appreciate it. Follow me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. You can find all my work over at ESPNlacrosse.com, including the article version of what we're discussing here today. And for my Wisconsin sports radio fans, Packers, Brewers, Bucks, Badgers on a daily basis. Download the 105.5 ESPN Lacrosse app. You can find me on Sports Lead Monday through Friday, multiple days per week, 3 to 6 p.m. So like I said, we're going to take a look at the Packers pass rush, Edgerrin Cooper's return, his impact on this game, and how those were really, especially in the second half, the catalyst towards the Packers eventually putting this game away against Seattle. So as we saw, as I've alluded to, the offense, Packers offense, was really sputtering in that second half, but the consistent pressure on the Seattle quarterbacks, Edgerrin Cooper's dynamic presence, again, was the catalyst towards the Packers coming away with the victory. And while the offense sputtered in the second half, it was a red-hot start for Green Bay, primarily through Josh Jacobs. They scored on their first two possessions of the game. Heavy dose of Josh Jacobs and the run game. They would score on their first four possessions of the game and 5 of their first 6 possessions overall. Again, the offense was finding a lot of success early on as a fast start, and even as things slowed down in the third and fourth quarter, it very much felt like the Packers were still in control of this game. However, they could never, not until the very end, they could never quite get to that point where they put it away, right? Where it felt like, all right, this game is now put to bed and over. I'm sure, especially with all of the past games that have happened in Seattle, still ruminating in the head of many Packers fans. But while they were able to score on, like I said, 5 of their first 6 possessions, they did struggle in the red zone, right? After those first 2 touchdowns, they had multiple field goals coming after that. They were only 2 for 4 in the red zone in Sunday night's win. It was a quiet third and fourth quarter. Jordan Love said afterward the offense, the passing game during that second half just got out of rhythm, right? And I think a lot of that started with the run game. Those massive running lanes that we saw at the beginning of the game all of a sudden weren't there anymore, right? And that it puts the Packers in, again, behind the sticks, those long down and distance situations against what is a good Seattle pass rush. And I thought the offensive line held up well. But also this is an aggressive, press man heavy Seattle secondary as well. And it felt like there was numerous instances where Jordan Love was holding onto the ball because he just didn't have anywhere to go with it. And I think something to keep in mind with this as well, because again, it wasn't the full 60-minute performance from this Packers offense. Again, there was that lull in the second half of the game after a fast start, and then it concluded with the ridiculous touchdown catch by Romeo Doubs. But this is a Seattle defense that over their last 4 games where they were 4-0, they were giving up only 15 points per game. As we talked about in the video coming into this game, very disruptive pass rush unit, very stingy pass secondary that's been one of the best in terms of on-ball production, pass deflections, interceptions, all of that. So again, the Packers put up 30 points against a defense that's been playing at a very, very high level for most of the season, but particularly over this last month. And like I said, I think a lot of the issues started with, again, those running lanes not being there. All of a sudden you're in a 2nd and 9, a 3rd and 7 situation, and against a good defense, it's just a tough way to make a living, right? It's a tough way to move the ball consistently. And again, we saw some self-inflicted errors. Jordan Love missed Romeo Doubs on an open throw. There was Jaden Reed just happened to slip coming out of a break on what play that looked like it could have helped move the chain. So it was just one of those things where it was already tough sledding against a good defense. But even in those opportunities where it looked like Green Bay had the opportunity to capitalize, again, whether it was a missed throw, just happenstance, Jaden Reed slips, they just couldn't quite get over that hump, and up until the end of the game put that final score or 2 on top of what they had established in the early going to really put the game away. Now, as all that's happening on the offensive side of the ball, the Seahawks still never got within 10 points of the Green Bay Packers. This was always a 2-score game. And now, again, we'll start with the pass rush. It was a very, very disruptive performance from the Packers pass rush. As Matt LaFleur said after the game, the defensive line came to play in this one. And we all know the issues that Green Bay's pass rush has had this season, particularly the consistency when it comes to their four-man rush getting home on a regular basis. They came into Week 15 ranked 26 in ESPN's pass rush win rate metric and 21st in pressure rate. Oftentimes the pressures that we do see from the Packers that they are able to generate, a lot of them are manufactured by Jeff Hafley, right? It's sending a blitzer. It's sending a manufactured pressure where maybe you're still rushing four, but it's the linebacker who's blitzing and one of the defensive ends drops back into the zone. Again, you're giving the offense different looks rather than just rushing with your four down linemen. But in this game against Seattle, I thought the Packers four-man rush performed quite well. And again, we still saw what I mentioned, the blitzes, the simulated pressures, all of that was mixed in as well. It's who this Packers defense is under Jeff Hafley. It's what they're going to do. But there was just a lot more consistency with the four-man rush. One, I think, and it's not just this game, I think since coming out of the bye week, Rashawn Gary is really, really coming on. The interior defensive line, Carl Brooks, he's put together, again, since the bye week, multiple games now where he's put together some really, really good pass rush reps. Kenny Clark, healthy now, healthy big toe, has been very disruptive these last few games as well. So we saw the collective performance, right? And I'll get into those overall numbers here in a second. But individually, really, since the bye week, we're seeing a number of these players pick up steam. TJ Slayton's another one. Jason Rebrovich, the defensive line coach, I think it was just a week or so ago, said that over the last 6 weeks, there's not another defensive lineman on this Packers team who has improved as much during that span as TJ Slayton. So we're seeing these flashes, right? These individual performances here and there, and they're starting to happen more often, and that's culminating into what on Sunday night was an overall disruptive performance from the Packers' defensive front. According to Pro Football Focus, Geno Smith was under pressure on 39.1% of his dropbacks. Sam Howell, Seattle's second quarterback who came in after Smith left with the injury, was under pressure on 53.3% of his dropbacks. So combined, on the 38 dropbacks between those two quarterbacks, they're under pressure for 17 of them, or 44.7%. To put some context around 44.7%, if we take a look at the season-long pressure rate for each quarterback in the NFL, a season-long pressure rate of 44.7% would be the second highest mark in football this season. So again, just to put some context around this, anytime you're seeing or hear about the quarterback being pressured around the 40% mark, that's really, really good. And the nearly 45% pressure rate that the Packers defense averaged in this game against Seattle, exceptional. Again, this over the course of the season, if they were able to replicate this on a week-to-week basis, which obviously the goal, that would be the second highest pressure rate in football that an opposing quarterback is experiencing. Now, the Packers turned those pressures into 7 sacks, and everybody was getting in on the action. Like I just mentioned, Carl Brooks, TJ Slayton, Rashawn Gary, Kenny Clark, the linebackers were coming on pressures as well. 6 different players contributed to those 7 sacks. Of the 12 quarterback hits that the Packers generated in this game, 9 were from different players. Again, everybody was getting in on these pressures, taking advantage of the matchups. And Kenny Clark said after the game, it's just winning your one-on-ones. That's what he felt that the Packers' performance from their defensive front really came down to. And as we alluded to at the beginning or a few moments ago, that's not an area where we've seen this Packers defensive front, this Packers pass rush excel this season, or at least consistently. And part of the equation when we're looking at the four-man rush that we always have to be mindful of, and this isn't to, justify their ranking 21st in pressure rate or justify the inconsistency that we've seen, but I do believe this is important context around the pass rush performance we've seen this season, and it's that you're rushing 4. In a 4-3 defense, you are rushing 4 defenders versus in a 3-4 where you have the 2 outside linebackers who are essentially pass rushers, you have 5. So you're at a numbers disadvantage, right? 4 linemen rushing versus 5 blockers. Now, in today's NFL as well, and LaFleur has talked about this on a few occasions, a lot of teams, because of just the athleticism that you now have at the tight end position, they will keep a tight end in to chip initially before leaking out into the route. So if an offense does that, now there's 6 blockers to your 4 defensive linemen. If they keep in a running back, that could be the 6th blocker. Or if they do that with the tight end, that could be 7 versus 4. So you can see, again, just from a pure numbers perspective, you're going to be at a disadvantage. So it's innately, obviously, there's more blockers, going to be more difficult. But when you get those one-on-one situations, and LaFleur talked about this coming out of the bye, when the Packers have those opportunities, when it is one-on-one across from you, obviously you're not going to win all of them, but you want to win them more often than you're not. And I think that's the area in particular where we need to see more consistency from this group. And so Kenny Clark, after the game, talking about how that was a big part of the overall success that the pass rush had, winning those one-on-one matchups, I think very much shows a big step in the right direction. Now, the challenge moving forward is going to be, all right, how do you replicate that? And the pass rush, their ability to get after the quarterback, has such a massive trickle-down effect to the rest of the defense and provided a huge, huge boost for the Packers cornerback room, the Packers secondary in this game, which obviously came into this game shorthanded. You didn't have Jair Alexander. You didn't have Javon Bullard in the slot, so I forced the Packers to move Keyshawn Nixon inside. Eric Stokes, Carrington Valentine were on the boundary, and they were going up against 2 of the most productive receivers in football. I mean, JSN out of the slot has over 900 yards this season. He's closing in on 1,000 yards. He's got over 100 targets in the passing game. DK Metcalf's been one of the most productive downfield targets in football this season. So this was a big challenge for the Packers secondary. And while JSN, DK put together efficient performances, combined they caught 13 of 15 passes in this game, they only averaged under 8.5 yards per catch. The big plays weren't there. And again, you give credit to the cornerbacks, you give credit to the safeties. I think Edgerrin Cooper, and we'll get to him in a second here, played a factor in helping out those numbers as well. But the pass rush, huge help in a game where they very much needed it. Shorthanded at cornerback, going against 2 highly productive receivers and an offense that wants to push the ball downfield, that will throw the ball to all levels of the field. When the pass rush is consistently getting home, you can't have those longer developing routes, right? Like, you may want to send DK Metcalf downfield, but the ball might not get to him because the pass rush is there that quickly. So it impacts the ability to push the ball down the field. Obviously, it impacts the timing and the rhythm of the play, right? Throws the quarterback off if you're getting home before he's made his way through his progressions or gotten to the read that he needs to get to. It's going to disrupt the play. And for the defensive backs, for the cornerbacks, what does that mean? It means less time in coverage. It means that there's going to be potentially mistakes from the quarterback that you're going to be able to capitalize on. Now, last thing I'll say, while the defense, the pass rush picked up the offense in the second half, the offense gave the defense a boost in their ability to get after the quarterback. Reason being, they gave them an early multi-score lead. That made Seattle one-dimensional. Over the course of the game, the Seattle running backs carried the ball just 14 times in this contest. When you're down by multiple scores quickly, it gets you out of your game plan, gets you out of your game flow. You can't lean on the run game as heavily as you may want to, so now you have to throw the ball more. You're in those predictable passing situations. The defensive front, and Enoch Bari talked about this after the game, he said we were just able to pin our ears back, right? You knew those passing plays were coming. You don't have to defend both the run and the pass. You can pin your ears back, get off the ball, and go get after the quarterback. So I think that was, again, we started this by talking about how the offense had struggled, but I think their ability to get out to that early lead was also instrumental in the success that the pass rush had in this game and just the massive impact they made, especially as the game went on. Now, when the pass rush didn't get home or wasn't extremely disruptive, the Packers had Edgerrin Cooper over the middle of the field, doing a little bit of everything, erasing anything that came in his direction. That was a really special game that we saw from him. Like I said, he did everything. By Pro Football Focus numbers, he had 3 pressures, a sack, 7 tackles, 4 stops, and what PFF considers a stop is a play that results in a loss or constitutes a loss for the offense. So if it's 3rd and 3 and Cooper makes a tackle at the 1 or 2 yard mark, again, that would be considered a stop because, well, they have to pick up the first down, but he stopped them short in that situation. So he had 4 stops in this game, so tackles that stopped Seattle from picking up a first down. In coverage, he was 2 for 6 when targeted, giving up just 13 yards, and he had the interception as well. I mean, the Packers players in the locker room, Enagbari, Xavier McKinney, Jordan Love, when asked about Cooper's performance, Kenny Clark, I mean, you name it. They were gushing over his play and the performance that he put on. Because again, it was really special. And he did all of that, everything I just mentioned. He only played 34 snaps. I think there was around 65-ish defensive snaps for the Packers in this game. So he did all of that while playing 34 snaps. That was an incredibly high impact game from Edgerrin Cooper. And like we talked about a few videos ago, I had one of our videos recently devoted to talking about the Packers' middle of the field defense, how it had been picked apart to a degree, how it had struggled against Miami, how it had struggled against Detroit. But getting Edgerrin Cooper back would be such a massive part of solving some of those problems that they've seen. And a lot of it can be, and again, there's always so many things that go into that, but a lot of that can be boiled down to just his speed, his 4.51 40 speed, his athleticism. In the run game, again, we saw this last night, his ability to, once identified, to quickly fill a running lane, to get sideline to sideline to stop the ball carrier from getting to the boundary, turning it upfield, willingness to fight through blocks. I mean, just a massive boost in the passing game over the middle of the field as well. He can cover a lot of ground, as we just mentioned, as we've seen. And so from a passing game perspective, one, he can be around the pass catcher to limit yards after the catch opportunities. He's also, the field shrinks if you're the quarterback, right? When there's someone with Cooper's speed and athleticism in the middle of the field, those passing lanes and windows that you're waiting to open, the zones that you might want to hit, they shrink very, very quickly, or much more quickly when there's a player of Cooper's caliber in the middle of field. And then I think a prime example of all of this was there was a screenplay last night that the Seahawks ran. And like we talked about in those recent videos, screen games have really, really hurt the Green Bay Packers as of late. But Cooper fought through the block, chased the running back down from behind, and held it to a minimal gain. Again, those are just the type of plays, right? Like the play call at that point could have been the exact same as it was against Detroit. The play could have unfolded exactly the same as it did against Miami, but you have an absolute playmaker in the middle of your defense who just erased it all, right? Who just overcame any of the other obstacles that the offense might have been thrown at him because of just his instincts, his ability, his speed to just erase. Edgerrin Cooper on Sunday night was an eraser. Anything that came in his direction, run play, pass play, he erased. And made anything that came his direction ineffective. And Xavier McKinney mentioned this after the game, saying obviously it was great to have him back and that he adds a lot to the defense. And this is something that McKinney's talked about previously. I think after the Jacksonville game was another example of McKinney alluding to the overall impact that Edgerrin Cooper has on this defense. Because again, we went through the stats, we can think through some of the plays that he made on Sunday night, but it's when you have that presence in the defense for Jeff Hafley, that gives Hafley more flexibility in the game plan he puts together, right? Because when you have a player of that speed, there's versatility that comes with that speed because they can do so much. They can cover so much ground. So you can ask that player to do more within your defensive scheme. There's also the trickle-down effect of that. If you know in the middle of your defense, you have a player who can cover a lot of ground, that then impacts maybe how you utilize the safeties on certain plays, right? That frees you up to utilize Xavier McKinney, for example, and put him in a different part of the field because you know that while there may be a larger portion that's open, Cooper can cover all that ground. So it's not just, and not to take away, the plays that he makes on his own individually, huge. Again, we saw that all on display, but his presence has a trickle-down effect to the game plan Hafley puts together and how his teammates, the other linebackers, the cornerbacks, the safeties, are utilized within the scope of what the Packers are trying to accomplish on a specific play. He is a big, big difference maker for this defense and was a massive, massive part of the overall defensive performance that we saw from the Packers and helping them put this game away against the Seahawks. Before we wrap up, I think this game was just another example and something that we've seen from the Packers offense this season, or team as a whole, I should say, is that they find different ways to win games, right? When one unit, one phase maybe isn't firing on all cylinders, there seems to be another element of this team that picks up the slack and helps them come away with the win. Now, the big thing the Packers are still chasing over these final few games is consistency overall for this team, the offense, and the pass rush as well. The pass rush, again, very, very encouraging performance, but now the challenge for them is to replicate this. So this performance that we saw against Seattle is closer to the norm. And again, not that you're going to pressure the quarterback 45% of the time every week, but you obviously want this to be closer to what your normal is rather than how this season has gone. And this performance from the Packers pass rush it's more the outlier right now, right? There have been more, quieter performances, we'll say, than highly disruptive ones like we're talking about right now. So the big challenge for this Packers front is replicating this, right? Duplicating it, doing it again, and doing it against better opponents. Because admittedly, this is a Seahawks offensive line that came into this game ranked in the bottom third of the NFL in pressure rate. They had given up, they had one of the highest sack totals coming into this game, right? So this was an offensive line unit that was or has been susceptible to pass rushes this season. And credit to Green Bay, you can only line up against whoever is across from you, right? They took advantage of the opportunity that was in front of them, and that's what you want to see a defensive front do in that situation. But now it's about replicating it. I've written about it. I've talked about it on here before. The defense's ceiling this season is going to be determined by the pass rush. However good the pass rush is going to play a pivotal role in telling us, all right, how good is this Packers defense overall? Because as we saw on Sunday, even without Jair Alexander, even without Javon Bullard, going up against DK Metcalf, going up against JSN, they were able to limit that Seattle passing game. And a lot of that started with the pass rush because of just the ripple effect that a strong four-man pass rush has on the rest of the defense. Every single player on that field benefits when the pass rush is getting home. So the ceiling for this defense is going to be determined by how good the pass rush can be down the stretch. And again, really, really good performance, but now it's time to build upon it. So if you've made it this far in the video, I appreciate it. So you might as well hit like, might as well hit subscribe on the channel. Thank you for tuning in. Find all my work over at ESPNLacrosse.com. Follow me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. Download the 105.5 ESPN Lacrosse app. And until next time, friends, take care.